different strategies that help us deal with variety, because each student is unique, because they bring their own backgrounds, because they have their own interests. And as educators, we should cater for all these needs. So today, for me, it is a real pleasure to introduce Nick Beare to you all, a professional that I admire and I really love. We worked together when he came here to Argentina, and it's a pleasure to work with Nick Beare, really. Nicholas Beare, now formally, has been involved in ELT for more than 30 years. He has always written, created materials, and he has always been a teacher trainer as well. But he has not only worked in Argentina and for Argentina. He has his career, his professional career, has focused on materials production for so many countries. Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, even for North Africa. In Argentina, we know Nick because he is the author of Winners for primary schools, Evolution for primary schools. For secondary schools, he wrote United, Get Set, and Stepping Up. And now Nick has written something different that he's sharing with us today. He's one of the authors for Share It, the new Macmillan series for primary schools. So a virtual round of applause to welcome Nick Beare. Nick, welcome to Argentina, at least virtually.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind. Yes, it's a shame it's only virtual, but hey, it's a start. It's a start. Maybe one day in the future we can come back. For the time being, it's online, definitely. Right, so should we get started now? Let's get started. And we've got, I hope everybody's got you can see the first picture about what does an inclusive classroom culture mean? What indeed? What do these things mean? I think it's very important because for some time we've been talking mainly about mixed ability classes and so on, and that is an important thing. But in fact, the whole thing about how we treat our students, really we have to take a little bit further and think about being inclusive about all types of students, because there are so many types of students. Up to now, we've been focusing just on mixed ability, the ones who are really, really good and the ones who are okay and the ones who are, we say, not so good or whatever. And that's one aspect, as I say, very good. But there are lots of other aspects we can be talking about. Now, let me just see. Oh, we've got lots and lots of people coming now, all from Argentina. Great, excellent. Well, I wish I was there with you. Right, so what does an inclusive classroom culture mean? Well, let's have a quick look. Let's move on to this little picky here. All right, it means we've got all these different types of students, and we'll talk about these, as you can see, these different types of students here. Sometimes where we've got one type of student when they all cling together, that's the ones, as you can see with the little, can I make a, no, I can't, have to describe with little orange pom-poms, as they're called, little orange pom-poms. They're all kind of the same and they stick together. We've got some who are completely on their own. Like there's a nice little gold one down there with kind of little shiny bits on, but that one is kind of rather on his own. There's two who are kind of slightly unusual. The red one with the little shiny bits and the brown one, they kind of stick together. And there's another little group of the grey ones who are all kind of quite similar and they stick together. So we've got lots of different types of students. So there's a poor little black one down there who doesn't seem to be with anyone, but there's a big green one who's got a blue friend and so on. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they're completely separate. So we've got lots of different types of students. We've got to handle them. We've got to, in some way, change that picture into this picture. Oh, isn't that lovely? We've got them all working and learning together. So those are all the things they need. They'll be working together on something. And sometimes they're sitting with their friends, like the little grey ones down at the bottom. Sometimes they're all mixed up with other people. It's quite a difficult thing to do because depending on the age group, but very much increasing as we go up from, say, level 1, from the 5, 6, 7s roughly, and then moving up to the other ones, the more advanced we get, the more sometimes difficult it is to get the students working together, for everybody to be involved. That's the tricky bit. Right, so that's what we want. We want them either working together as one whole classroom, or even more difficult, getting them following instructions, taking part in activities in little groups. And that's sometimes very difficult in a classroom, because you have students that don't mix with each other or don't like each other, and it's all a bit awkward sometimes. All right. So we've got to get all of these various combinations and get everybody working all together and enjoying it. It's not just a question of discipline, it's a question of actually getting the students to enjoy working together. Not easy, but it can be done. Right, so that's what we're aiming for, okay? So inclusivity is including people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. And that sounds kind of obvious. And then you think about it, but I haven't really thought about that. That in fact, when you're including people, everybody is getting involved in it. And it's all too easy to just leave a few other people at the side and think, well, they're not very good, or they don't really like English, so it doesn't really matter too much or whatever. And they just feel it's not so much that they're not very good or they don't like English or whatever. It might be a bit of that. But the main thing is they're just feeling more and more excluded. And for every class they go to, each time they're more excluded, more distant, more marginalized. Basically, not doing anything makes things worse. And it gets worse where you've got some students who are really not taking much part in the class, and you don't really know what to do about it, because the situation can get quite sort of the point where the student's so far away, not obviously sitting there, but in kind of terms of their brains, they're kind of out there somewhere. They're not really paying much attention to it at all. It's going to be very difficult to sometimes bring them back in again. The ideal is to get them working like that all together right from the beginning of the course. Not always easy. I can't say I've always been able to do it, but it's a way of getting everyone to do it. Right, so what can we do? How can we do this? Where are we on that one? Let's move forward. Right, with our people who are involved, they're involved in the class, they feel comfortable in the class. That's one thing. We have to take into account those students who don't feel on the face of it very comfortable in the class, and somehow let them or encourage them to feel comfortable. They enjoy the activities. Well, we know how to do that. We just buy a Macmillan book, preferably share it. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, but there are lots of activities really which students can enjoy in lots of different ways. So it is important for the students to actually enjoy the activities as much as possible. They feel helped as well. So it's not that students have to be able to do all the activities and do them all and that's it. They want to feel that this teacher is actually helping them as a class and individually. A lot of time, so you get sometimes students, I've had this in my classes, students who feel that I'm not really helping them. Now, it's quite a shock sometimes when you suddenly realize, that's what they're thinking, because we tend to think we kind of help the whole class and so on. But some students can feel kind of marginalized by the whole thing. We think we're doing okay, but they don't feel very happy in the class. And they put in the bottom, the almost rather dramatic sounding, they feel safe. Safe in this context, I mean, obviously nothing awful is going to happen, but safe in the sense that they're going to have a nice time in the class. Sometimes we get students who are picked on, I think that's the expression we use, where they're picked on by other students. They might be, say, unpleasant things to them. They might be without our knowing what could be happening outside the classroom. If it does, we've got to try and do that in the classroom, that actually it's all okay, that the English class is somewhere they enjoy coming to, where they are not picked on, they are not kind of isolated, they're all involved in the class. So it's not just the very bright ones or the very popular ones who are taking part in the class. We want people who are perhaps usually not involved, not really liking the other subjects so much, but in the English class, they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they enjoy the activities, they're involved. It's all great for them. Right, so that's what we're aiming to do. And how can we do it? Well, let's have a little bit more of a detailed look at the types of students we can have. We don't have all types of students in one class, but in one class we may have some types, in another class we have other types. Let's have a little look at how they can be. Right, so that's the first picture of what our students are like. This may be what our class looks like at first glance, when we first walk into a new group of students. Oh yes, well they're all there, and they all look, yeah, sort of pretty good students. Yeah, this should be okay. They're not really all like that, are they? In fact, every single one is different. So when we start looking at the students, there's all sorts of things that might come out, and start, as we get to know them more, as we hear more about them, as other teachers discuss them, as teachers need to do. It's not a question of all these all these students looking exactly the same. There's all sorts of things with these students. Right, now, what I did for this little picture here, these are the same students, and I picked up some of the cases that I had when I was working at an international school in Latin America. I won't go into the details, but it was basically a British international school where we would have students, in this case, from lots of different countries, but also from the country I was in. So it's a complete mixture of students, some from who would come from countries a long way away, some who lived kind of just down the road, basically, complete mixture of students. And we had to get them all working together. So we would have some students who would have all sorts of unusual, well, we think of them unusual, but they're not unusual, on sorts of special things about them. So, for example, we might have one student down here who had Asperger's syndrome. Makes it a little bit difficult. We don't need to go into the details of all of these, but a student who actually finds it difficult to learn in many ways. We might have a student, as you can see, parental neglect, who is not being looked after by his parents, his or her parents, properly. That can be a big problem for a student. Well, it is a big problem for a student, and that affects the way they are in class. You could have somebody with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, the students who just won't sit down some of the time when they're in that kind of state. They're jumping up and down, they're talking, they're doing silly things, sometimes throwing things around in the classroom. All of those things, quite a common thing, quite a common case for students to have. Sometimes getting onto the more kind of less well-known things like Tourette's syndrome. I did in one case have a student with Tourette's syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but they find it very difficult to control what they say. So this was actually, I think about 11, again, I'm not going into details, 11, 12-year-old. And he would use sometimes terrible language in the class. A really nice student, really friendly, but sometimes he would just blow it completely and use really bad language. We were told about this and we were given some ideas of how to handle it. Basically, ignore the really rather bad language. It'll all work out okay, and you just kind of calm people down. But it's not easy, actually. We had students who had come from other countries, as you can see there, doesn't know any English at all. They had no English. They might perhaps speak 2 other languages, but they had no English whatsoever. And they were coming into classes that were given in English. Tricky again, they had extra teaching and so on. We had other students who traveled around the world because their parents were working in different places. I've got one there, one student who was 15 years old, lived in 14 different countries. Can you imagine? So that's one student moving from one country, the next year another country, next year another country, another country, another country, another. The student had no idea where they were. It's quite difficult to get them involved in a classroom, really. We had students who were dyslexic. That's quite a common one, where it is actually very difficult for them to write or read in different forms, obviously. We had students who are dyspraxic, where they have various other learning difficulties to do with, well, with all sorts of things we won't go into. And there are a whole load of other cases which I did fill in, and then I thought, these were a bit too personal, about students who had really serious problems. So I've taken them out, and those are the serious problems. I won't talk about them now. Right, so we got that much variety in a class, and that's really quite something. This was quite extreme because of all the other students coming from other countries. But in every class, there's a tremendous amount of variety. Even if it's just students from the local area, there's a tremendous variety, and you'll be getting these things like parental neglect and autism or dyslexia, dyspraxia, and so on. They can all happen in a class. Right, as somebody here has just put, diversity makes teaching more challenging. Yes, it does. It certainly does. But it also makes it, in many ways, not just more rewarding, but more useful for the students. If we're really helping them, we're not just helping them with English, we're helping them with lots and lots of other things, the way they react with other people, they interact with other people in the situations. We can help them all a great deal. And in the process, learn quite a bit ourselves, I feel. So let's move on. So we've decided that this little group, as it says, this doesn't tell us what's going on inside everyone's head, how they're feeling and so on. They might all look completely the same, but they're not at all. How are they really? Well, there it all is, what they really are. Some of them really are like, as we thought, we're just, that's it, they're okay. Others are, well, some of them are falling asleep. Some of them are kind of crying inside them. Some of them are angry. Some of them are unhappy, confused. So many different things. I think you've noticed that most of mine seem to be falling asleep. I don't think that's quite right. But anyway, and some pictures haven't come out. I don't know why that is. They're not in class today. Right. So there are lots of different things we need to actually be able to deal with. So what sort of things can we do? It's all very difficult. Let's move down to where we were. We've done that, done that. And let's move down a bit to, where were we? Oops, there, okay. Right. These are three areas I think we need to look at when we're focusing on on being very including everyone in the class and being inclusive in the class. There's three aspects, basically, I think. How we interact with the students, that's in a more social kind of way. How we say hello, how we talk to them, and so on. Our teaching style, that's the way we actually handle the material, the things we're using in the classroom to teach English, in our case, and the actual activities we use. So it's all kind of closely related, but they're actually very different things. The way we act with them, even if we're not teaching, we might just be talking to them. Our teaching style, when we're actually using the activities in the class, how do we handle them? And also the actual classroom activities, what they are supposed to do and how we can get the students to get the most out of them. There's those three areas. We're going to look at each one in a bit more detail. So first of all, is going to be how we interact with the students. Right, so that's that one. We're moving on. Right, how we interact with the students. There's three ones here, three little areas we can really, I think, make a difference in the class. The biggest one for me, I think, the one that can cause the biggest problems is avoiding tribes in your class. When I say tribes, again, in the teaching context, I'm talking about the sort of groups that you get in classes. It always happens as we get more and more towards adolescence and within adolescence, where you have little groups who kind of keep themselves to themselves, and they think they're very often the special group. And they are special groups, but in different ways. Everybody's special in a different way. And these little tribes, for example, they can be the trendy looking ones, the ones who've always got kind of really cool clothes on and they look really cool and so on. And they kind of don't mix with the other ones sometimes. There could be sometimes a question of social class, the ones who comes from the nicer classes, the richer classes, the ones separate from the ones who come from disadvantaged classes. There are lots of different types of tribes. Another one that's very popular is the sporty little tribe, the ones who are really good at sports, and they're not going to really be talking very much to the ones who are perhaps no good at sports or hate sports or whatever. We get the geeky ones, the ones who are really good at computing and so on, spend all their time, perhaps too much time sometimes, looking at computers and programming and who knows what else. That's another little tribe. Now, in a way, that's okay. They have their own friends and so on, but we want to somehow in the class get everyone involved. Yeah, so that if necessary, or times, they can all work with each other, not just in their little tribe. So that's one thing we're going to look at. Time to breathe. A lot of the time we're not letting our students or ourselves breathe properly. And this is something we really need to look at. That's a great way of getting the right kind of atmosphere in the class, an atmosphere that's calm but fun as well. And a lot of that is to do with breathing. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I think this is one of the most important ones. They're all important, actually. Be what you want your students to be. And we're going to talk about that. That's probably the most difficult one in many ways, but it's very, very important. Right, so let's look at each of these in detail. Avoiding tribes. Now, how can we do that? That is so difficult. All right, how can we avoid tribes in the class? So it says here it's difficult to have inclusive classroom culture when there are tribes and cliques, pretty much the same as tribes really, where you've got the sporty group and the trendy group and the geeky group and so on, all these different ones. How can you get them all at some point working together? Yeah. Right, one little idea which has worked for me, it's terribly simple, but it kind of forces people at times to go together. We don't want them to get together all the time because they want to be with their friends, but we want to make it so that when they are all working together or in different groups, they're doing it well. Yeah. So we can reduce the effect of the little tribes or cliques, whatever, with a very simple little game. Who likes? Yeah, dead simple, but it works. Right, let's have a look at that. So what we've got is, hang on, I've come back to the same page. Where am I? What's happening? Oh, there we are. Okay. Right. Okay. So basically, you've got your classroom divided into two. You've got on one side, yes, on the other side, no. Okay. Right. And all you have to do is to the whole class, give them lots of easy to answer questions with yes or no as an answers. Okay. So if you've got something like who likes hamburgers, they can say yes, I like hamburgers, or no, I don't like hamburgers. Okay. Who likes Taylor Swift, just as an example of a singer? Obviously, lots of others that could be put there. Who likes Harry Potter books and so on? Yeah. Just lots and lots of little questions like that. And all the students can be answering it with either yes or no. But the different thing is now, what we've actually got to do is for them to, as it is here, either say, if the question is who likes hamburgers, you can have one group for yes, and they all have to go to that side of the classroom. You can put a big yes there, big letter yes. They must all get up and go to that level, that side of the classroom. No, they don't like hamburgers. Well, may not be very many. Make sure there are some. And they will have to go to the no side of the classroom. So you said the question, you say yes or no, okay, and they all stand up and they go to the right level, the right side rather of the classroom that corresponds to what they think. And the result of that is that inevitably you've got lots of people mixed up who don't normally mix up, okay? Because some of the sporty people might like hamburgers and some might not, okay? Some of the geeky people might like hamburgers, some not, and so on. And suddenly they're all mixed up. And that's by itself quite something. You know, you've actually got them sort of standing next to each other. The other thing is they've actually got to answer chorally. Okay, so for example, you point to the yes side and say, what is your answer? And they all say, we like hamburgers. Yeah, okay, and you get them to repeat it. Yeah, we like hamburgers. Again, we like hamburgers. Again, louder, we like hamburgers. And suddenly you've made a little group. Okay, and it's extraordinary how it works, actually. Simply saying we like hamburgers in the classroom doesn't kind of make you into any group. Moving them across kind of pushes them into some kind of group a little bit, yes. And then when they've actually all got together to say in it, saying this all together chorally, we like hamburgers, and you're encouraging them to say more and more. That's great, because they're actually suddenly working together as a group and having a bit of a laugh as well. It's fun. Okay, same with the other group. Okay, the no group, let's hear from you. We don't like hamburgers. Yes, again, louder. We don't like hamburgers. And again, one more time. We don't like hamburgers. Again, those people have been working together as a group, which they may not do normally. It's a fantastic little activity because it's so simple. It's so easy. Yeah, it's quick. Okay, and after that, they all go and sit down in their normal places. Just for a moment, they've all been together in their relevant groups of yes or no. You might want to do it with 2 or 3 different things, or perhaps just one thing, one classroom, one thing, another classroom, or leave it a bit, or whatever. Lots of different ways you can actually do it. Don't overdo it. But perhaps once or twice a week, yeah, with different things, particularly things that are kind of current, like music or books or films or whatever. And that's a great way of getting them together, and it really works. Just for a moment, you push them all together and they've had a bit of fun. That's it. That's kind of what you're trying to do. All the way they can go back to their normal sitting spaces and just carry on as before. But they've just learned a little bit more about including people, about getting everybody together. And you've got a little bit more, you've achieved more about it. So that's one way, that's one little activity, which for me has always worked really well. Well, I think it's well. Right, moving down. What's the next one we've got? So that's one way of handling tribes and cliques, I think, more or less the same thing. Right, now the breathing thing. Okay. Another way you can actually pull the class together is just by the way they breathe. Okay, now they're not going to be all breathing in one way when they're doing an activity or talking in pairs or something. There are different ways of breathing then, but it's a great thing just to get the whole class to do it together. Again, you're getting everybody involved. Okay, right, now normally what used to be, when I did this little mention these things, before it was other things, this is a slightly newer one, I used to get everybody to stand up in the room and we'd all do the activity together. Of course, it's not so easy online because you're all sitting there on your own. But hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stand up, and perhaps some of you wherever you are, you can stand up too and do the exercise with me. Just a very simple kind of activity. We'll just do it very quickly, okay? Right, so all you have to do, well, I'm going to stand like this more or less, okay? You're standing together, they're all standing there, and you want them to breathe slowly, calmly, and deeply. So you actually tell them, slowly, calmly, deeply. Right, okay, and the students do that as well. And then again, we breathe out slowly, calmly, deeply. And again. Is anybody doing it? I'm not sure. Now, it's a great thing to do actually yourself, okay? You've got those stressful moments, okay, when you, whatever time it might be. But here, we're doing it as a class activity. And it has an extraordinary activity on the class because they're not doing anything connected with English, really, except perhaps the instructions in English. but they're just being something altogether, something which is very good for them, because breathing properly is good generally, and it helps you just kind of act more quickly, feel better, feel more positive, and so on. So it's great for the class, and it pulls everyone together. So there you are going, I'm not saying anything, they're just all doing it. And then after a short time, you just do it perhaps 5, 6 times, whatever. And then very quietly, you just stop the activity. The way I normally would do it is this way, okay, with just a long and a pause. That pause is really important, because for a moment you've got them all together as a group, just waiting for your little instruction, which is, okay, sit down and we'll carry on with the class. Now, something like that, you might think, why are we doing that in the English class? It doesn't help their English. Well, helps their English when they hear the instructions, but the point is it helps their learning. It helps the way they are in the class, that they are all doing something together, and it's something calm and enjoyable that makes them feel good. So the previous activity, the yes, no one, that was more kind of jumping up and fun and working together. So kind of, we can do this and whatever, all together. This one is much more calming, particularly if the class has got a little bit hyper, as they do. If you're doing this, particularly that moment at the end when you all go, with the pause, it really works. So another little one you can do, another little trick, and moving on to the next difficult one. Be what you want your students to be. So these are all things we want to encourage our students to be: enthusiastic, polite, friendly, positive, kind, helpful, all things we want to be, our students to be. But we can't just say, right, okay, you must be polite to everybody, but it's not me. No, I can tell you off, I can be whatever, okay? You must be positive as well. Not me. I can be negative with you and critical. No. You can't do that. Okay. If you want your students to be those things, enthusiastic, polite, friendly, positive, kind, helpful, etc., then you need to do it yourself. Okay. I can't tell the students to be enthusiastic if I'm not enthusiastic about the class. So if you're sending out those negative vibes, but you expect the students to be, oh, whoopee, this is so fun. Not going to work, is it? Basically, you have to be what you want your students to be. So all of those things, those are what you want. I think it's a reasonable list. Those are the things that you must be yourself, and they must see you being that. Okay. Tricky one, really. There's some examples of that, and perhaps some other ones in this character, Adrian Bethune. I'm not sure, perhaps the people from Macmillan can give you this, the address there, the Teacher Toolkit. He's a great bloke, and he's very good at doing a lot of these activities. He works in schools in England, where, particularly in schools where there are a lot of problems, and there are, gosh, so many problems in English schools, I tell you. There are some, not all obviously, but there are some in underprivileged areas where there can be a difficult time, let's say, for the teacher. And he does a lot of that with a lot of these activities with that. Well, not all of these, but he has his own activities. One of these was his. And he actually has a fantastic response from the students who can be very problematic, very difficult, and really quite difficult. Somehow he manages to calm them down, act like this, and then carry on with the class. I hope none of you have anything quite as difficult as that, but it can be, and it's great to see some examples that he does. Unfortunately, don't get the examples in the really bad classes because you can't film them, obviously, but he's very good at giving examples of things. So you might like to look at that. He's got some great ideas. So there we are. We have looked at 3 ways of helping ourselves. Here we're talking about the last one, about the values. Work with values. Focus on perhaps 2 or 3 values, the ones you want them to do. Respect, kindness, responsibility. That's 3 of them. Okay, can't do too many at once. And congratulate students when they've shown kindness or respect or responsibility in the classroom. Okay, might even give them perhaps a round of applause or whatever, and that encourages them to actually do these things. And then they see you doing these things. Perfect situation. Excellent. Right, moving on, because my goodness, already we're running out of time. Why does this always happen? Where are we? We're there. Let's move on to this one, about your teaching style. Okay, all these things are kind of closely related, but this is the second kind of aspect I wanted to talk about, teaching style. So how we teach makes a huge difference to how our students learn, and there's no one correct way to teach English. Okay, there's different students, different teachers, different countries, different abilities, different everything. Okay, we need to kind of get the most effective ways of doing. So first of all, something I'm always going on about. Whenever I do any kind of talk, I'm always going on about this. I'm afraid, okay, keep the amount you say to a minimum. Now, I know I'm talking and talking and talking and talking. That's because I'm doing a webinar with talking about one subject. In class, I do not talk anything like this amount. It's a tiny amount because I can speak English and you can speak English too. We don't want you or me to speak English in the class, and we want the students to speak it and write it and read it and so on. And if you actually do all the time talking in the classroom, the students sit back and may listen to you, may not listen to you, whatever, but they're not actually contributing in any way. So keep your instructions to a minimum. I think this is one of the big problems that people have when activities aren't clear. Never happens with the Macmillan book, of course, and certainly not with Share It. And actually, there's one thing that is very good. I'll show you in a minute. But if your book, unfortunately, creates problems with difficult instructions, okay, no point in going through long instructions, because the more you say, the more the students turn themselves off. Okay, teacher's talking. Oh, I can daydream for a bit. Yeah, okay. And while the teacher's talking, they're thinking about something completely different. Okay, and suddenly the teacher says, "Everybody ready?" And they say, "I don't understand. I'm sorry." This happened to me many times. That's when I realized, don't try and explain in detail. If they don't understand the simple instruction, don't talk and talk, as it says there. Show the students what to do. An example with one student who has caught it, or perhaps you can help them, whisper with them, just to go through, show them to do it, makes all the difference. And I'm not sure why, but a lot of students seem a bit loath, teachers rather, seem a bit loath to do this. It's always much better to cut the talking, just do an example. That way, the students see what to do, they've got a better idea. You might still have to go around and help them, but even so, they've got a clearer idea. So it does make a big, big difference. Right, moving on. Whoops, where were we? We were there. We're on to that one. This one. Now, teachers know about this one, moving around the classroom. And they will say, oh, yes, I move around the classroom. But often I've seen, and it's inevitable because I do it myself, moving around the classroom means moving over there a bit, moving over there a bit, and then back here, and then back there, back there. And that's not really enough. Whoops. Why is this jumping ahead? Go back to where you were. Where were you? That's it. Right. I don't know why I did that, but let's. Right. So moving around the classroom, that's sort of okay, but we mean really that. And that means spending time at the back of the class. That's the best place for a teacher, really, because you're at the back, okay, and the students can't really see you. They want to look round. You say, don't look round, carry on. They don't know what you're doing, so they have to do what they should be doing. And if they turn around, they're not doing what they're doing. It's kind of, it's a bit mean on the students, but you have really got them under your thumb then, really completely under your thumb, because they cannot do anything. They have to do this. And a lot of teachers are a bit worried about this, about going to the back of the classroom. It's actually one of the best places for a teacher. I know some teachers, particularly with very big groups, feel you're too far away, but actually that's a lot of the time where you need to be. So spend time there at the back, okay? And then you find the awkward students start moving to the front, so that can be a bit confusing, but hey, you can manage. Right, so where are we? A bit of a problem moving down it. Ah, there we are. That one. So we've just done that one, spending time at the back of the class. The other one, and this is more about time management, is that sometimes teachers spend a long time just doing little long pictures on the whiteboard, the blackboard, or whatever, and taking time doing it. And that's not really the point, because you don't have to do a brilliant work of art. If you want to just draw a person and elicit a name and some sentences, it doesn't have to be a perfectly drawn person at all. It can just be somebody who is just a person. As an example, okay, I've got here, develop your own style of drawing characters, which is quick. Make your drawings quick. That's rather difficult writing. That's a cue. Quick and quirky. So quick, as in you get it done really quickly. Yeah, you don't have students looking at you drawing a exquisitely drawn person, kind of absolutely perfect resemblance of somebody. What are they doing? No, they're not looking, they're doing other things. So it's going to be quick and quirky, something that's a little bit funny, so probably they can laugh a little bit at it. I've always done that. I've always done pictures that are really, really not very good. Whoops. Like, as it says, I've been drawing characters like this way for more than 20 years. Somebody said to me 20 years ago, actually more, I think it's about 30 years now, this is how you can draw some people. Oh, well, that's good. And I've done it since then. And everybody thinks it's ridiculous. They're terrible pictures. You can roughly tell whether it's supposed to be somebody, a child or a teenager or an adult, and you can do various little additions to make it clear and so on, whether it's male or female, sort of, you can, okay? But it doesn't really matter, because you're going to get illicit names and so on. So all you have to do, quick sort of funny, quirky little picture, that's what appeals to the teacher, not the exquisitely drawn picture, which is okay, but I mean, it's nice, I'm sure. But it's not really, the classroom is not the place for that. Nor is it something that's just, I'm not so keen on just a pencil man, because they're not very appealing for the students. Something that's funny, that makes them laugh, like these, that's great. I mean, okay, they're not they're not going to congratulate you for your fantastic drawing, but they do kind of like it, because they're so, and quite often students end up copying this style, doing it rather better actually, which is great, and you can congratulate that for them. Right. So that's another, just a little tip, which, it's one of those things that I think really makes a difference. Where are we? Moving on. Tick, tick, tick. Oh dear, I'm losing the space here. Right. Ooh, okay, this one. We can't do this one altogether. It's one which, again, I'm always going on about, but it's a great way of getting the attention of all the students all together, because although I'm always talking about what you have to do with the students, I think it's equally just as important that you are the person in control when you need to be. It's really important that you can control the classroom like that. The only way to do that is learning to project your voice. A lot of people don't use their full voice, basically. A lot of people actually use a rather quiet voice in class. And that somehow when they try to bring that out a bit, they just sound a little bit angry. And that's not good, because then the students are like, we've made this teacher angry. And it's kind of like winning a point over you. Basically, you've got to try and be in control with that commanding voice. And we can all do a commanding voice. I know lots of little exercises, but it's not really so good. I'm not projecting my voice now because, well, that would be awful because the microphone's there. But basically, we're talking about throwing your voice, yes, so that people can hear. I imagine that came across quite loudly. I'm not shouting. I'm just getting everything coming up from the bottom. We can't really do it here because you're all over the place. Can't really see you, can't hear you. But there's a little reference there on a WikiHow about, it's a really good one, about different ways of projecting your speaking. It really is very useful, particularly if you have quite a quiet voice, because for classes, quite often you do need that, not so much louder, but more commanding voice, a voice that gets to the students, really. It's not shouting by any means. That's the last thing. It's a question of projecting it. So have a look there. I hope the people, the Macmillan people, can give you a little reference. If not, just look under WikiHows that tells you how to do anything projecting your voice, and it'll take you to, I think, directly to that one, actually. That's the main one, the best one, or whatever. And finally, on this one, get your students moving around as far as possible. That really is good, really important. One of the things that's really nice is setting up galleries. And I think one of the things, this is just a little tip, makes such a difference. Okay, let's say you've got a student who's written something there. That's nice. Okay, I like Share It because it's a very nice book and I like the pictures. Well done, good student. Just kidding. Okay, there's what the student's written. We're going to put it up on the wall, which is okay. It doesn't look great though like that, does it? It's not making much of an impact. But if you have a whole load of little cutout frames, whoopee, suddenly it's all different. Put it on properly. There we are. Suddenly it looks so much better, doesn't it? And you've got a whole load of those on the wall. That just looks really nice. So as you'll see from that picture, I've got organized gallery walkabouts where they can all look at all their different work and so on, see their own work, other students' works, etc. It's okay just putting them up on the wall, but better get a little framework or lots of different colors, etc., etc. They don't have to be like that, but whatever, and stick them up like that. It's much, much more motivating for them. And that really, really works. And there they're looking at everybody's groups. Once again, you're working together as a group. It really, really helps. Right, now, I don't know. Oh, somebody said Share It is fantastic. Thank you. That was Amalia. Well done. Thank you very much. You get an extra key. Moving on. Right, where are we? Where am I? There. Okie dokie. That's a little one. Let your students show up every now and then. It's a good thing, but we won't go into that right now because I'm running out of time. Classroom activities. Right, the main classroom activity for getting everyone working together, that's really the most useful thing, is a proper communicative activity. Lots of communicative activities. Keep the instructions quick and simple. And that's the problem with communicative activities, because people find them difficult sometimes. The teachers find them difficult to explain. So what you have to do, of course, is go immediately to, here it is, the fabulous Share It Share book, which is like an extra bit you get with Share It. And this is really good because these are for every level. You've got 6 levels there. 6 levels of Share It. Every single one has a share book, and those have very clear communicative activities. So if we just look at one, we find lots of them actually. Okay, and we've got various ones there, lots of different styles and so on. In the one on the, I'm not sure which is on your, the one where they're all having a picnic and so on. That's one of those ones where the one student has to remember something and the other one student asks questions. It's all very clear. They've all got the little instructions at the bottom. You see how to play. So the teacher can read that, do one example, the students go straight in and do it. Another one here, I can't remember what this one is actually. Okay, but they are doing something. Oh, you've got to just identify students. So he's tall, he's whatever. And the other one says what it is. We've got lots and lots of these ones, different ones for every level. This is about illnesses. This is more advanced, obviously. What should they do? Okay, so they'll discuss with that what they should do. They have to match it then with the different possibilities there. There they use 2 pages in the Share It book. Okay, each student has a Share It book, so they can be looking, getting the answers and asking questions from them. Works perfectly. It's a great way to do communicative activities, and they are so important for actually getting students working together. And with that type of communicative activities, you can mix up the students a bit. Really get them mixed up so that they're not working in their little cliques. No, they just have to work with somebody else. but because it's easy and clear, it really, really works. Okay, they're not so worried about who they're with. What they want to do is to get the activities done, and that's great. That works really, really well. We have other examples here. I won't go through them all, but as you can see, they've all got their little how to play instructions that the teacher can go through and give an example, and whoopee, it's all done. You've got a great way of doing communicative activities. They work, the students understand them, and they get started quickly, and that is such an important thing. Right, moving on. Can't seem to move on from there. How can I move on? Oh, there we are. Right. I haven't really got time for this now, I think, because we're coming to the end. Are you teaching online? Is anybody here? Let's just quickly see if you can type in if you're using online, if you're having to teach online still. Anybody teaching online still? I'm not seeing anybody. So that's, if you are oh yes, here's somebody. Right, me, there we are. That's two people. Right, there might be more. Right, excellent. So let's just have a quick look at that. This is a great place. Was it studyseed.co.uk? Again, I hope they can give you the address. There are lots of areas that were about why teaching online is so tricky. You've got technical areas, visual areas, emotional areas, social areas. I can't really go through those now because there's just too much detail there. But okay, I think there are some points. If we can just take these into account, and it really is good. And the main thing, the problem that teachers have, I think, or students have rather, with online teaching, apart from the fact that the teacher is not there to see what they're doing, but there's a certain amount of that. Students feel they're not the same teacher. Yeah, it's not like the classes were. I think one of the main problems, I've talked to students about this, one of the main ones is that your voice, I put there, your voice is tinny. Yes, you don't sound like yourself. And that's a big problem, I think, particularly we have with these kind of things we're using at the moment. You do sound a bit tinny, like it's not really your voice at all. It's a bit harsh, a bit nasty. Even when you're kind of being nice, it's a bit, doesn't sound quite right. If you're like me, it can happen. You get angry with the computer. Oh, what's happening? What's happening? Yeah, okay. You look very small. That's another thing. I mean, they're used to a teacher, not a little teacher like that. Everything you do is different. You're different when you're doing this. I'm different when I'm doing a webinar to when I'm doing a classroom. If I were doing a classroom online, again, it's different. So try to be like the teacher they know. And that's rather difficult, actually. But one thing I do, and I think it's generally a good thing to do for everybody, I feel. Right. And it's something to do with this. There's a lovely page from Share It. Oh, isn't it pretty? I have to do this very quickly because I've only got a couple of minutes, if that. Right. So you've got a typical lovely page. That's from Share It 1. Okay. And students use it in the class, and that's it. Boom, gone. Turned over the page. We'll never see that again. It's such a pity that there are so many great pages. I mean, not just in Share It. There are in other books as well. Where really you could use that again and again. Okay, so perhaps when the students have done this, gone on to another unit, and just for a couple of minutes one day, let's go back. Do you remember this picture? Oh, it's funny because this and this and this, and do you like this and that? And they can be asking each other questions. Where is this? Who is this? Pointing to each other. Who's next to? Whoever the character is. What color is so-and-so's hair, etc. How many girls are there? How many boys? How many share it, etc. So it's very easy for you as the teacher to ask questions, or for the students to ask each other questions. And they're seeing the pictures they've seen before, which they liked, they're fun, they're beautiful. Why not use them again? It can be for pictures like that, or it could be for pictures like, we'll move on to that. Here, that's another one actually from Share It 1. Koalas, yeah, I mean, like koalas. Who doesn't like koalas? Beautiful, they're cute animals. Not safe, but hey, really, really cute. And you do one page with them, boom, and you forget it. Let's go back again, because you could even use this a year later in this lesson. This is level 1, so I think they're just doing can and have and present simple. Yeah. Then perhaps another term, yes, later on when they've done the past simple, let's say. Yeah. you get them to write a little story, right? So there's the little baby koala. There he is in the tree. Okay, and maybe the little baby koala fell out of the tree, and they can continue the story. Something like that. Lots of different ways you can use the same really fantastic material that the students love. You can use it again. Well, you don't want to use it too many times. Maybe use it one more time or 2 more times. It brings back things. It shows different ways you can use the same words, the same things, but with different tenses, different meanings, and so on. And it's great for the students to feel they're kind of really using the language in different ways. They kind of got a really good command of the language. Right. Okay. Yes, I've got quite a few people. Somebody's put about, are you teaching online? Not now, thank God. Well, okay. It's not easy. It's really not easy. And it's not actually very satisfying sometimes. But some things like this actually can help, where you're giving the students something they'd seen before. It's kind of all a bit more familiar to them. It's like the old days. Obviously, at some point, we'll all get back to teaching in class, but not all of us are. It can be quite difficult. Right, okay. So there were the 3 areas we talked about. We've got to finish now very quickly. How we interact with the students, our teaching style, and our classroom activities. I hope there have been some sort of useful little ideas there for you. So all I can say is good luck with your classes, whether they're online or whether they're in classroom. Much easier for you, but hey. And finally, okay, join me on Facebook. I'm rather formal there because I've got one Facebook page which is Nick Beare, but that's really for my family and my friends and so on. But Nicholas Beare is the more like the teaching one. I have to admit I haven't done much with it for some time, but I have lots of stuff coming up. So come along, join me as Nicholas Beare to that one, and we can all get started. Excellent. And I see Alejandra is there saying stop. I'm here and I've stopped. I have the questions for them though. Right, shall we do the questions?
Okay, no, I'm not saying stop. On the contrary, it's a pleasure to listen to you, Nick, as usual. Yes, let's go. Let's go to the questions.
Go with the questions. Oh, hang on.
We're going to make 5 questions, and 5 or 3, Nick. What would you rather do?
Well, should we do 3? Because actually a couple of these.
Okay, so we're going to Nick is going to make 3 questions about his presentation, and the first 2 teachers who answer each question, they're going to get a prize. We're going to get in touch with you. I will say the name, and I will ask you to write in the chat box your email address so I can go back to you, and we're going to send you a prize. Okay. Good. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I hope these aren't too difficult. Okay, right. Let's try one now. They're all things I've mentioned in the last 50 minutes. Well, 55 minutes, 60 minutes. Right. Okay. Where can you find fantastic communicative activities? Got to say exactly which thing it is. Okay.
Yeah, but what part? It's in Share It, but what part of Share It? What's the name of that part?
What part of Share It? I did say what it was. Maybe you can remember, or maybe you'll have to rush it. Where you find the really
the share book. Okay,
activity.
Emilce Ortiz, Emilce, great. Emilce and Ana Paula.
Hey,
Emilce
well done.
and Ana Paula, good. Emilce and Ana Paula, can you please write in the chat box your email address?
Right. Okay. Oh, let's do a difficult one now. Okay.
Give me a second. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Give me a second, Nick. I need to write down their email addresses. Okay.
Okay.
Ready? We may go on.
Okay, so the next question. What is the name I used for groups of students who like to stay together and don't want to mix with others? Hey, there we are. Actually, either of those is good.
Okay.
Wow,
wow. They all remember it. They all remember it. Let me, I can't go back. It goes, let's see, give me a second. Yeah, Romina Martini And Eliana San Martin, can you please write your emails, your email address? Come on.
Are we okay to go on? Or
Yes, yes, thank you.
okay. Excellent. Thanks to, is it Maria Cristina? Or yes, somebody I think who's already done a friend request. Fantastic. Thank you. I'll accept it in a minute. Right. Okay. And the last one. This one's a little bit tricky. Okay. Right. We were talking about teachers drawing on the whiteboard or whatever. And I said, make your drawing quick and what was the other word? That's a difficult word. Somebody's got it. Quirky. Well done.
Okay,
Well done.
quirky.
Look
Yeah,
at that.
here we
Look at that. Look at
go.
that. Gosh, you
The first
were
one is
lucky.
Maria Verónica Guada, and the second one is Andrea Coliados. Can I ask you for your email address, please? They are still writing.
There's one. And another, I think.
Okay, here we are. Okay.
Excellent.
Excellent. So,
Okay, a round of
and we are
applause for
done.
everybody, because you've all been answering. You've all been listening, haven't you? That is fantastic. I got correct. A round of applause for you. Your own round of applause. There we are. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's been a really good time. Excellent. I really enjoyed it.
Nick, as usual, it's been a great pleasure. We would love to see you again, but next time in Argentina. Okay, your session was fantastic, really, and I can assure you,
great working with you, really fantastic, really good.
And I can assure you, teachers, that Share It is a really interesting series, very dynamic, 6 levels, ideal if you teach 5 hours or 6 hours of English a week. Super, Nick, you are our teaching king.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thank you so much.
Everybody, yes. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Hats off. Yes.